What's up, everybody? My name is Speech from the group Arrested Development. Do what you can with what you have and with the people around you. I've lived by this mantra for the past 30 years. Before experiencing any success in the music world, this saying gave me a simple path to be effective. How I could make a difference no matter what. Because that's what we all want as leaders, don't we? To make a difference no matter what. Do what you can with what you have and with the people around you. Now, this mantra helped refine me as a leader at a pivotal time as my band's first album was just being released. The album was called 3 Years, 5 Months, and 2 Days in the Life of. The amount of time refers to how long my group was together before we got our first record deal. For those previous 3 years, I was a musician trying to lead a group of members who I had handpicked to participate in my impossible dream. That as hip-hop artists from Atlanta, we could land a major record deal and shake up the world, even though it had never been done before. But we could do it if we kept motivated and did something no one else had done before, which we did. When the record was launched, it was a whole new level of leadership for me. Suddenly, I was called to lead way above my pay grade. As a group that was just starting to blow up, we're getting bigger and bigger, and we're climbing the charts. But because of that, suddenly I was in all kinds of different rooms, different situations, with different types of people than I was before. And to be honest, the stakes could not have been higher. So I'm thinking, how could I succeed even though I've never done this before? And that phrase came to my heart. Do what you can with what you have and with the people around you. This gave me the confidence to move forward ever and backwards never. And this mantra was said by a young boy in South Africa. His name is unknown. I've never met him. But from way across the world, this boy's quote inspired me so much. He taught me that whatever resources you have can still be resourceful. And even if the odds are stacked higher and higher against you, you can make stair steps with those odds to a better future. And that little boy is what I call a brave leader. If it wasn't for the brave leaders in my life, I would have been overwhelmed by the things I couldn't do, things I didn't have. I would have been overwhelmed for the people who weren't there for me in my life. You may not know this, but I was born at a very challenging time into a challenging world. I was born the same year that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. It was a world of division, great uncertainty, and constant change. Not too unlike today. So how do we deliver our best work in a world of constant change and uncertainty? In a world where challenges are inevitable? I believe we need to not only be leaders, but brave leaders. And I'm going to talk about how we all can do that today. So let's jump in. But first, I want to share a few more potent examples of brave leaders who defied the odds, who did a lot with only a little, whose work fundamentally changed the course of my life and what I believed was possible. I want to introduce you to Robert Thomas. It's my dad. My dad grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the 1930s and 40s. Now, this was a place with horrible situations for Black folk. Unfortunately, opportunities were very rare, racism very overt and covert, and housing discrimination and redlining, plus high rates of crime was the norm. And to be honest, where he was born and grew up originally, Tennessee, was actually much worse. And this man could have fallen under the weight of this. No one would have blamed him. But he decided that his mindset was going to be different. He said he could beat the odds. He could lead himself and others to opportunities. And you know what? He did. He was a man who wasn't afraid to dream wild dreams. One of the wild dreams he had was being the first roasted corn vendor at what was the biggest music festival in the world called Milwaukee Summerfest. I don't know what was more daring, my dad wanting to sell a product on the side of a country stage, a country music stage of the largest music festival, or that he didn't choose soul food or fried chicken, which would have been much more the norm. No, he went all in on corn. Actually, we all went in on corn because the whole family poured our money into this business. And we had to take a look at what he was striving to do. My dad had us all wearing plaid country western shirts and cowboy hats to play to his ideal customer. And though we're a black family, it wasn't usual that black families dressed like Johnny Cash. This was the business that he needed to succeed, or would we lose everything? There was no precedent for doing something like this. But the response was unbelievable. People loved Robbie's roasted corn. And literally, the first year, lines wrapped around the entire numerous buildings that were around this country stage. Lines were wrapped around the buildings to get an ear of corn. It was uncanny. It was crazy. But people were always curious, like, are people really trying to get corn here? It was corn. It was roasted corn. And every year, for 45 years, those lines were that way. And in fact, since 1978, the company my dad started is still going strong to this very day. That's dope to me. I want to introduce you to my mom, Patricia Thomas, who's now Patricia Patillo. Born in 1939 in East St. Louis, another very rough part of the United States. My mom didn't really see herself as the visionary like Pops, or an activist, or even a leader, but she had led anyway because she saw a need. So after the 1968 riots that followed Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination, Black-owned businesses that were looted and destroyed needed to be temporarily closed. When they reopened, mainstream newspapers at the time wouldn't even talk about their reopening. They wouldn't cover the story. So the community leaders asked my mom, who was an elementary school teacher, if she could help spread the word for them. And my mom came up with a pamphlet called the Soul City Shopper. Now, the Soul City Shopper featured various Black businesses. But what started off with her passing out these pamphlets quickly became the largest Black newspaper in all of Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Community Journal, which is 45 years strong to this day as well. I've talked a lot about the power of brave leadership. But what is a brave leader? And what makes that brave leader brave? Most people think of courage, but I'll tell you, it's more than any one thing. There's 5 qualities of brave leadership, 5 things that can empower you and can inspire others in meaningful and measurable ways. So the first quality of brave leadership is being bold. It's seeing a void and being willing to step out and fill that void. Whether you're building on something that already exists or it's never been done before. I told you that I got a bunch of misfit group members to live out my impossible dream, to get a record deal with a major record label. But I didn't tell you that I had a vision of life music in the era of what I call death music. This and many other songs like it were influencing culture around me, crime rates exploding, and where I'm at in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My high school house parties that I do every year used to be fun and safe, but changes brought automatic machine guns. People started feeling that that was good, that was cool. A brother that I love to death who was in my rap crew, T.A. Wiz, was murdered at his own house. His father trying to help him, murdered as well, right at the doorstep. That's why I created life music. To make music that uplifted people, that celebrated life. And I knew it was bold and I knew it was needed. Our music, our image, everything went against the grain and it was desperately needed. But I also had a vision of making this band, this group, multi-generational. Most of us were in our early 20s like myself, but the youngest in the crew was 13. The oldest was 60 years old. So we had an elder, we had men and women, Afrocentric, revolutionary, for the people, by the people. Sometimes bold leadership is about fulfilling a need that needs you. After our album release, I'm surprised. I'm totally freaking out. It's 1993, and my group won 2 Grammy Awards for Best New Artist at that, Best Rap Single as well, 2 MTV Awards, NAACP Award, the Soul Train Music Award. It wasn't about the awards, though. It was about the bold approach in leadership. Not only was our approach bold, but our first hit song was bold as well. See, bold can also be turning something bad into something better. That's bold. Hardship can become hope. Trauma can become transformational. I was transformed by writing a song called Tennessee. I'm going to sing the chorus for you. Take me to another place. Take me to another land. Make me forget all that hurts me. Let me understand your plan. My childhood in Tennessee, my grandmother was there. Every summer I spent with her. She's this warm, amazing, strong woman. And my summers were amazing with her. And then this one particular year, I got that call that nobody wants to get. My grandmother passed away. I felt like I lost a pillar in my life. It literally was a hole in my heart. And many of you I know have experienced loss. It's horrible. But I had choices. I could self-destruct, or I can self-construct. A week and a half after her death, I wrote the song Tennessee. And at that time in hip-hop, bravado was the way to make it. Like being hard, not showing your heart. This was the way to fame. But instead, I cried out to God. And I bared my soul. And trust me, it was a bold move. In 1992, Tennessee became #1 on Billboard's Hot Rap charts. In 1992, it soon after became #1 on Billboard's rap charts. I'm bugging. It was voted by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as one of the 500 songs that shaped rock and roll music. Sometimes fulfilling a need needs you. Now I'm going to sing the chorus again. Take me to another place. Take me to another land. Make me forget all that hurts me. Let me understand your plan. The second quality of brave leadership is being resilient. Now, what do I mean by that? Being resilient is being willing to stare extreme hardship in the face and move on regardless. By 1994, our career was going extremely well. In fact, by this time, my crew and I had sold 4 million albums. We had toured all around the world. We had just went to South Africa and was literally spending personal time with Nelson Mandela. Like, it's crazy. We got back from South Africa the next day from being back. We're performing for the first ever Hot 97 Summer Jam concert. My group was one of the headliners. Hot 97 FM is one of the nation's biggest hip-hop stations. Now, the Summer Jam's star-studded lineup included Wu-Tang Clan, Nas, Queen Latifah, A Tribe Called Quest. The arena was packed out. And I'm sitting there, I'm watching the many artists that went on before us. And trust me, these are a lot of my peers, but also a lot of my favorites. And I'm fired up. We finally get on stage. I'm amped. We just came back from South Africa. I'm ready. I'm ready to tear this place down, 20,000 people. We go into our first song, and from the crowd of 20,000, there's about 1,000 or more yelling, boo, boo. I'm like, what? And in my mind, I'm really like, WTF, like what? As my lyrics pour out of my mouth in real time, my mind is thinking about everything going on here except the music. We're in the epicenter of hip-hop's birth. Let me explain. We're a down south southern group, and we're in New York City with a New York and New Jersey crowd. And I'm thinking to myself, we've rocked here before. Why are we getting booed? And I'm like, okay, maybe we're getting booed because we're one of the first Atlanta groups ever to be this successful in hip-hop. And New York doesn't like us moving into their territory. You got to be back in these days. There was a lot of East and West Coast stuff. The South wasn't even really mentioned. Performing in New York as a down South group in hip hop was volatile in those times. We used to do the Apollo in Harlem, and people would boo at you if you were whack. I was like, maybe we're getting booed because we're sweeping all these award shows. I told you, Grammys, MTV Awards, we're everywhere. And in hip hop, sometimes the more mainstream you get, there's extreme backlash. Lastly, hip hop was changing directions from this diverse cornucopia of subject matter. Rappers with all this musical types that they're doing and all this grit. But then it became just about grit in this narrower lane of drug deals and corner hustlers. And that's all it was starting to become about, regardless of the reasons we're getting booed. In fact, booed off stage, well, actually, we stayed on stage because our entire 1 hour set, we had to finish. We had contracts to abide by. So we're sitting there getting booed for an hour straight. Sometimes you have to endure the boo. Sometimes things are not going to go well and you are going to have to just endure it. I remember there was women in the front row, literally 5 feet away from me, just looking at me bored as I'm rocking this entire show for an hour straight, as if like, whatever, I hate you, get off the stage. And I had to go into my personal constitution, like, while I'm performing, while lyrics are going out, while we're doing our show, I'm going over what makes me me. Sometimes you have to go over what makes you you. I had to check off all the areas of who we really were. Okay, are we a great group? Check. Do we have a valid purpose of what we're doing? Yes, check. Are we imposters or are we authentic? We are authentic, check. Do we belong here? Check. And so I said, I'm keep going. I'm just going to have to rock this. And we rocked it. So we went an hour with the booze regardless. It was just going on. After that, we released another album. It was called Unplugged for MTV. It went gold. We released a third album, and it was nominated for a Grammy as well, but we didn't win. It had much more lower sales, 500,000 from 4 million. But we kept going. The third quality of brave leadership is being adaptable. Being able to pivot in an instant. Let me explain. In 1995, my group decided to basically break up. We had a lot of internal beefs, a lot of stress. The fame was very new for us. We didn't totally know how to handle it. So it wasn't really an official breakup, but they asked us to do another album and no one was really on board. Everybody was just going in different directions. So I decided to start recording on my own, and I recorded a solo album, and I just titled this Plain and Simple Speech. What used to be a big group was just me, and to me it was a new chapter in my life. My girlfriend at the time, my present-day wife, her and I had a new baby. It was our firstborn child. I bought a new house. It was out in the sticks. It was beautiful, peaceful. My girlfriend, she moved in with me so we could all be a family together with our son. I was extremely excited. This was an amazing time in my life. My solo album, it comes out, and the record sales were the lowest of my entire career. It sold a whopping 15,000 records throughout the entire United States. This basically was a little bigger than a family reunion. And that's coming from 4 million albums, 500,000 records. Where do I go as an artist? I needed to be adaptable. And one thing about being adaptable is just because something isn't a hit in one context doesn't mean maybe it can't be a hit in another context. It's about being able to see what is good despite a lot of things being bad. And this, it was truly bad. Let me tell you a quick story about Kevin Systrom. Now, Kevin Systrom, he started this app called Bourbon, okay? It was in 2009. He called it Bourbon because he loved whiskeys and bourbons. And the app allowed users to check in, they could post their travel plans, and they'd share stories about their wine tasting and bourbon tasting and so on and so forth. This app did not do well. Kevin was adaptable. And he got input from the users. Now, it wasn't a lot of users, but the users said, yo, I love the photo aspect, but I don't really love the rest of this app. And Kevin took a step back. He stripped Bourbon down to just its photos, commenting, and liking functions. And Kevin renamed it Instagram. Now, I think Instagram is doing quite well. I had to step back too. On tour, opening for Hootie and the Blowfish, huge band from the 90s, my solo album is tanking at that time. We're killing it on stage, but the album is tanking. I'm paying my band more than I was getting paid from Hootie and the Blowfish to perform. I'm feeling down every single show. I'm losing money. And I'm backstage after a show and I'm reading the Billboard magazine charts. And I'm used to having chart-topping songs from my Arrested Development days. And I'm looking at the top of the various US charts and I don't see any chart that has my music there. So I start looking down the chart. And my record was a whopping 96 in the top 100. And ironically, it was going down from there. I was scrolling through the magazine to see where I was in other countries. The group, Arrested Development, and I had been to Japan in the past, so I was like, well, let me just check Japan. And so I take a look at Japan, and by this time I trained my mind to look down at the bottom. Are we 96? Are we 95? Because this record was doing so bad, and I didn't see us. And in fact, I didn't see us anywhere between the 90s and 100 of the top 100. So I go up to the 50s, and it wasn't there either. I go up to the 30s, it wasn't there. I'm obviously incredibly discouraged, and I even go up to the 10th place, and it's not there either. So I looked at 9. Who was there? Oh, okay, they got it. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, nothing there. But what was there? The #1 record in Japan was the very record of mine that sold 15,000 copies in the United States. And peep this, it had been there already for 7 weeks and was still going strong, and I had no clue. Being adaptable. I called my manager immediately. I'm like, yo, check the charts in Japan. I totally pivoted. We left the Hootie and the Blowfish tour, left the United States, went to Japan, and we toured Japan. We toured Japan and had sold out shows for the next 5 to 6 years. I just want to say, domo arigato, Japan. Thank you.